country on the beautiful south coast of New South Wales. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining this panel event. Before we kick off, I'd like to run through some housekeeping. If time permits, there will be questions at the end. You can submit your questions through the chat function on Zoom, or if you're watching live on Facebook, pop your question in the comments. If you wish to ask a question anonymously, for those on Zoom, you can submit it via the Q&A box. If you'd like your question answered by a specific speaker, please include the speaker's name along with your question. We will do our best to get to questions. However, we do have a lot of information and experiences to share today, so please don't be disheartened if we don't get to your question. We are going to release a resource following on from this panel event, and we'll endeavour to answer your questions through this. We also welcome everyone to get involved in a conversation. Share your thoughts and ideas in the chat during the session, but like in every public forum, we ask that you respect other people's views whilst holding true to your own. I am delighted today to be joined by Melanie Dimmitt from HireUp and author of Special, Stacey Touma, CEO of Kindred, and Jennifer Williamson, also from Kindred. So let's chat about therapy assistants. You might be thinking, what is a therapy assistant versus what is a support worker? Is there a difference? And the short answer is yes. A therapy assistant is an allied health assistant working under the delegation and direct supervision of a therapist. The therapy assistant must be covered by the professional indemnity insurance of your supervising therapist. A support worker covers a wide range of workers with different roles and responsibilities, all of which include supporting a person with their daily care and/or activity programs. So when it comes to choosing whether you engage a support worker or a therapy assistant for your child under the NDIS, it can come down to your type of plan management. If your child's NDIS funds are plan managed or self-managed, you have the flexibility to engage any suitable person of your choosing to support your child, whether that be a support worker or a therapy assistant. And we're going to touch on that in this panel. But for the purpose of the panel, we will be referring to both. So there are many places to find therapy assistants and support workers. And I'm going to throw to you first, Mel, on this. You're currently working with HireUp. And for those who are unfamiliar with HireUp, HireUp is Australia's largest NDIS registered platform where you can find, hire and manage your team of disability support workers. So can you tell us a little bit about how the platform works?
Yeah, sure. Well, first up, I never planned to be working for a disability support platform, but my relationship with them started with Jordan O'Reilly, who's one of the co-founders. I interviewed him for Special, and he and his sister Laura grew up with a brother, Shane, who had very similar disability to my son, Arlo, who has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and epilepsy. And Jordan and Laura started this company because they saw the difference that good support made to their brother, Shane. It just opened up his whole life. And traditional providers, I think, would send out a different support worker every day to Shane, and they'd have to try and retrain this different person in everything that Shane needed. And it just wasn't great. And they saw the value in, continuous support, a special relationship with one person or a team of people who consistently come and really become part of your family, which is what has happened for us with our beautiful support worker, Maddie. We connected with her through HireUp when we moved to the Southern Highlands almost 2 years ago. And as much as HireUp hates me comparing them to Tinder, which we're not supposed to, I will, because it is a bit of a matchmaking service. You put up a profile. I put up this gorgeous profile of, it helps having a cute picture of your kid there. And, this is Arlo, I'm 5. This is what I need. These are things I like. This is the kind of support I'm looking for. And we were looking for someone who Ro and I could train in everything Arlo, so that my partner Ro and I weren't the only people on the planet who knew how to feed, handle, do Arlo's exercises, but we were also looking for someone that he could have fun with, a friend as well. So Maddie, our support worker, she's 21, she's an OT student, which is just phenomenal. So she not only brings the fun, she brings this expertise, and she has this hunger to learn. So for us, a support worker and a therapy assistant, it's the same thing. And we're able to do that because we are self-managed. So we hire Maddie as a support worker, but she's super involved in Arlo's therapies as well. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting off track. We can talk about that later. In short, HireUp is a platform. You sign up, make a profile for your kid, and you can search for support workers in your local area, or you can post a job ad about specifically what you want, and support workers will get in touch with you. So it's super simple, and it's all about finding people that share common ground with your kid and your family for these long-lasting relationships.
Oh, it sounds great. I think it's also important to mention that there are other platforms and websites where you can search directly for support workers. Mabel is another one that comes to mind, and justtherapy.com.au, which is a website dedicated to finding a therapy assistant. Your therapist might also have recommendations or even employ their own therapy assistant, and many early intervention organisations will employ therapy assistants. But I think it's also okay to think a little bit outside the box, and this is particularly helpful for regional families who may not have access to as many services. So consider who could assist your child with their therapy goals. It could be a support worker, a teacher, or a coach. And families have been known to put notices on their community notice board or contact local universities in search of students who are studying to become a therapist. I might throw to you now, Stacey. So where have you successfully found a therapy assistant or a support worker?
Thanks, Bree. We have used HireUp, so I think that has been, one of the approaches that we've used that's been really successful. We didn't actually post an ad, but what we did was we searched through some of the profiles and got a feel for, I guess, someone that, the way they spoke about themselves and their interests and their types of qualifications, just to get a feel for their attitude and vibe. So that was one way that we've found a therapy assistant. We've also used therapy assistants attached to our therapist. So we have been using therapists since Alex was in preschool. We have used them in the true therapy assistant sense. So we haven't used a support worker at this point. So it was really helpful to have a therapy assistant that was attached to our therapist from the programming sense, which I'll touch on later. We've also had recommendations from our therapists. So you can find therapy assistants out there that do that for a living. And, typically they might be studying occupational therapy or speech pathology, and getting a recommendation from a therapist is great. We also have used Facebook, and I think what I've loved about Facebook, so we're actually at the process of finding someone right now, and I just posted in my local community group, so we've just moved to a new city. We are keen to find someone that is local to us, that can come and do a few shifts in the afternoon to help with some of Alex's goals. So I put an ad together, posted it in our local Facebook group, just highlighting some of the things that we're looking for, and connected with some local uni students, which was really nice. But the thing I like about that as well was it gave me a chance to, I guess, stalk them on Facebook and just get a real feel for who they are. And I guess, Alex, and just to see if they're a good fit for Alex. But Facebook has been actually quite resourceful for us.
I think we're all guilty of doing a little bit of Facebook stalking on who's going to be working with our children.
Yes.
I guess the big question is around funding, and I want to come to you on this, Jen. I know families will be asking, can I use a therapy assistant, or do I have to use a support worker? I don't have core funding. Are you able to shed some light on this? We know it's a little bit easier to be flexible if we are self-managed, but what do families need to consider from a self-managed plan and agency managed point of view?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good question. And sometimes I think families struggle to kind of see a big difference between self-managed and plan managed, because there are a lot of similarities, but I suppose this is one area where self-managed might come into its own a little bit more, where you really do have a lot of flexibility if you're self-managing those budgets. And, you can also self-manage one budget over another budget, or self-manage one budget and plan manage another budget if it fits in with what you need to do with the funds. So yeah, I think with with self-management, you can basically do what you like. You don't have to worry about the price guide. You don't have to worry about line items, etc. I found with, we have 2 boys, and one plan is self-managed, one plan is plan managed with a section of self-management. So the difference that I've kind of found is the plan manager needs to have the invoice with the particular line item covered. So we like a little bit more flexibility around our support worker / therapy assistants, in the sense that they're assisting with some of our therapy goals, or they're building the capacity or helping to build the skill development, which kind of draws to the line item that we kind of refer to in capacity building, rather than the therapy assistant line item. We refer to the individual skill development and training line item under capacity building. So, you know, self-management, awesome. You don't need to worry about any of this sort of stuff. Plan management, yeah, you just need to make sure you've kind of got your line items kind of covered off on. Agency managed, you might be in a bit of strife if you want to have the flexibility to do things like Stacey's talking about, where you go onto Facebook and find people, or you stalk people in your local community who you think have a great relationship with your child, which we're currently doing. My little boy loves the ladies at our local coffee shop, so I'm kind of feeling them out on availability. They all work kind of part-time, and seeing if there's someone there that might be looking for some extra hours. So to be able to do things like that, even incorporating, because we incorporate my husband's personal trainer into our capacity building team, for want of a better word, but you know, he's not a registered provider. So obviously with agency managed, you have to have registered providers. So that's going to be a trick for people to get around. So I would probably recommend thinking more around your self-management or your plan management. When you've got your agency managed, you probably do need to find therapists who work with therapy assistants in that sort of technical capacity of working under their insurance, etc. Yeah.
And I guess on that, like if a family doesn't have, they might be agency managed and they don't actually have that type of funding, what should they be asking their therapists, and what should they be including in their next planning meeting if it's something that they want to explore?
I think probably the simplest thing would be changing how your plan's managed, and whether they feel comfortable with that. And sometimes people might do some agency managed in that first instance while they're getting used to finding their feet with the plan, and then maybe the next plan they might feel comfortable to move across into self-management or plan management.
Yeah, okay. It's a lot, isn't it, when you're first starting out?
It is a lot, yeah. And like I said before, you can always just select a little part of your budget. So you might, you know, if you get a little bit of core funding, maybe if you make that self-managed, so you've got a little bit more control over it. And like we've said, you can use that core funding to be building skills. So really, you know, we've got a support worker across 2 children, and we kind of switch depending on what she's doing or what role she's kind of playing. So with one child, it's more the support from core, but with the other child, it's more about helping with building capacity and skills. Yeah. So we kind of use the same person across the different funding categories depending on what they're doing. And that's great to have that. I mean, that's just another extra level of flexibility.
Yeah. That's really great. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jen. And if anyone is watching and that was like a little bit too much information, we are releasing a resource, so we will touch on that. I'm not saying, Jen, I love what you've said, but I just sometimes find when you're first hearing about all of this, it can be very confusing. So we will break that down in our resource, and everyone can review that later. So moving on, we know what a therapy assistant is, or a support worker. We know some places where we can find them, and we've touched on a little bit of how the funding works. I just want to ask now, what do you consider when choosing the right fit for your family? So I might throw to you, Stacey, first. Like, what did you consider when you were looking for a therapist for Alex, or a therapy assistant or a support worker, and what processes did you follow?
I guess for us, personality was a really big one. Alex has a very big personality. He's super friendly, he's social, he's fun, he's funny. And fortunately, he connects with people straight away. We actually, just a funny story, we interviewed a therapy assistant last week, and he hadn't even met her, but I showed him her Facebook profile picture, and already he was telling me how much he loved her. So he loves people. So I think personality was a really big consideration for us. But what we do is, I guess, we start by essentially writing a job ad, and like you would for any job you're advertising, we include a statement that just talks about who Alex is, so his interests, his personality, a bit about our family. We also then talk about the role, so what the person will be doing, the types of times that we're looking for, and the activities that they'll be working on with Alex. We then cover the types of skills and knowledge and experience the person needs to have. And we break it down by, what we would consider like essential, and then what we consider desirable. This we do just for internal planning. Like, I do this for myself. So I feel that this is just a really helpful process for me, just to work out what exactly we want this person to do and what type of person we're looking for. But then when I actually do post an ad, I post it in a much more casual tone and just use some of that key information to just highlight what we're looking for. Then when we're considering who to choose, I guess we take into consideration the goals that we're going to be working on, and then the skill set that person needs to have. So when we've used a therapy assistant before that has gone to school, for example, we used to have this guy that would go to school at lunchtime, and he would facilitate like a lunchtime Lego group. And then also he would go to after school care. And the goal was to help facilitate some friendships. So in that scenario, we wanted someone that was young and fun, and someone that was just, I guess the kids weren't going to be put off by having an adult around that would then deter them from hanging out with Alex. So we found the perfect guy. He was young, early 20s. He was studying early childhood. That worked out so well. The kids actually were begging for him to come back. So that was really good. Everyone flocked to Alex and his therapy assistant. And the ladies after school care also begged for him to come back. So that worked out well for everyone. But then for some other goals that we've worked on, so we've done a lot of work with our therapy assistant around things like handwriting and cognitive development. And in that case, we thought it'd be really helpful to have someone that was studying either occupational therapy, speech pathology, or education, so that they could bring, their knowledge and skills that they're gaining through their qualification to the work that they're doing with Alex. But that's been really helpful. We haven't used a support worker, and we also haven't used anybody that has been alone with Alex or that has taken him out and about. It's definitely something that we are considering for the very near future. But I think in those cases, there is actually a lot to consider in terms of creating safe spaces, and even just considering when the person is going to be at your home. I think it's something you need to think about, whether there's going to be somebody present and the type of setting that you're in. So I think that's definitely a consideration too.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, did you have anything you wanted to add around what you consider for, when you're choosing a therapy assistant for the boys?
Yeah, look, I probably go less about ability and experience and go straight for attitude and openness and positivity and that kind of can-do attitude. And in fact, sometimes I find if they have too much experience in the disability space, they can be having lower expectations. So yeah, I like someone who's fresh that I can kind of mold as well. Yeah, so that's kind of important. That's quite important to us. We do the same, I think, with, like Stacey was saying, about sharing information about our child, but trying to find someone who connects, you know, with the boys. And our boys are quite different. But finding someone who really connects on a level, if they've got the same interests, or they're interested in what they're interested in, then that really helps too, because that builds rapport and relationship. So we do a lot around shared interests. Yeah.
And have you found one worker that suits both the boys, like personality wise and everything? Or
yeah, we do have one particular worker who we just adore. And yeah, and she's amazing. I know later we're going to talk a little bit about upskilling and stuff. I remember the first day we had her, after she left, I went to change Connor's nappy, and his nappy was on back to front. And I thought, I think maybe she hasn't changed a nappy before. But she's amazing. You know, she's just been so eager to learn. Yeah, she's just had the right attitude. She's picked up things really quickly. She's got great initiative. She's trustworthy, and she has great relationship with the kids. She's very caring, very positive. So they're sort of the things that we look for. I go for the personal attributes, and then I feel like there's so much we can do to train.
Absolutely.
Teach. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you, Mel? Like, is there anything that you consider for Arlo?
Yeah, definitely. Just before I say that, I want to quickly answer Layla's question about insurances. So if you go through HireUp for your support worker therapy aid, HireUp takes care of all the insurances. So you don't have to worry about their fully insured. HireUp employs their support workers, unlike any other support platform. Yeah, so we go on a lot on Phil. It's hard because Arlo tends to love everyone. So he'd be happy to hang out with, you know, most people. And we've had 2 experiences with HireUp support workers. So the first one we had was in Sydney, and she was lovely. She would read books with Arlo, take him for walks, but she didn't naturally incorporate therapy. We took her to, you know, a good advice, I guess, is to take your support worker or therapy aide along with you to every appointment you can, or sit them next to you in telehealth appointments, try and get them to even do the appointment so they see everything your kid is getting up to and they form relationships with your kid's therapist. So we did that with our first support worker, but she wouldn't naturally integrate any of the exercises into the play. So say she would lie with Arlo on the couch and read a book. Our current support worker, Maddie, will put Arlo in a cross-leg position with a weighted blanket on, and they'll read a book together. So she just naturally from day dot, and maybe it's because she's an OT student, incorporated all of his exercises into stuff that didn't feel like exercises. And that's when we were like, wow, we're really onto something. She also brings with her like this Mary Poppins bag of toys, and these toys are like OT exercises. So she has this little shark that Arlo pushes the teeth down on and it snaps him. And we were like, wow. So we've now bought the shark, and she's introduced us to, you know, she's opened up his world. If it was up to me, we'd never go 10-pin bowling as a family, but she'll come around and be like, come on, let's go. And we bring Odie too, and we all go 10-pin bowling. And Arlo, we have found out, is super good at pushing a ball down that thing we never would have known if, you know, it was left up to me. So I think when you notice that someone is seamlessly integrating the stuff, they're showing initiative, they're introducing new things, creative things, coming up with creative problem solving, if they're opening up your child's experiences, you're onto a winner.
And I guess as well, like, I mean, with Arlo, was there any kind of particular skill set that they needed, or did you basically have to train? Was there any kind of medical training, first aid, toileting, all those kind of things? Is that something that just came naturally and you guys just trained on the spot, or did she actually come into that space with that skill already?
Maddie had worked in disability for many years. She works with a number of families around here. She has a mother who has a disability, so we were lucky she had tons of experience. She's also works as a therapy aide at the local therapy center. Maddie's like the dream, but there's not only one of her. There are other people like her, but we
all need a Maddie.
We do, but Arlo is quite specific. And certainly she's done the tube feeding journey with us. So Arlo got a G tube put in a year ago, and Maddie has been by our side learning with us the whole way through. I think she's just not phased. She's open to everything. We've trained her up. And I think, again, a good support worker will just be so keen to learn and so keen to support their client as best as they can, and they will learn from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just important to note for families that are considering like these things. We need to consider, like, do they need that specific training? Do they need a working with children's check? Have a trial session with them? First aid training, you know, is there seizure management that you need to consider? Do they need training in that? So that'll be very specific to every individual family. And I also think it's really important to note that whoever you choose to work in this role, they must be implementing the strategies to help your child reach their plan goals. And also just remember that it's going to take a little bit of time for the person that you choose to develop a rapport with your child. There might be a little bit of trial and error when it comes to finding the right environment, and the personality mix as well. You might think someone's wonderful, and then when they're actually working with your child, you know, they might not be the right fit, and that's okay. It's okay to stop that and move on to something else.
Bree,
yeah, sorry, go.
Sorry, Bree. I was just thinking at the moment about how these support workers or therapy assistants, they just like cross over, don't they? So whether you have the core funding for a support worker or you've got the capacity building funding for the therapy assistant, you can basically have them doing the same role. And even if you really want core funding for what they used to call respite, and they don't use that term anymore, but we kind of know what that means. So if people want that, but they've got the capacity building funding, they can have one of these people, these amazing people who can help our kids develop their skills. We don't want someone just sitting on the couch watching TV with our children. Like, they're going to be doing stuff that helps to develop skills, etc., for our kids. And you know what? If it means that they're taking them out to the playground to practice on the playground equipment or whatever, the flip to that is that maybe you do get an hour or an hour and a half just to have a nap if you've had a rough night or whatever. So I think they cover across, and you can be creative, especially like we've said with self-management, but you can be really creative with whatever funding you do have to get what you need out of the plan. Yeah
Absolutely.
I just had a moment where I was like, I need to say that before I forget it.
No, I need to add something as well. I actually wanted to add on the topic of finding the right person. I think, you know, no matter where you find them, firstly have a phone call. I think just to interview that person and speak to them and just get a feel for them. But wherever possible, try and get them to come and meet with you and your kid first, and just even an informal get together, because we recently found someone who I thought, you know, we'd chatted online, we'd kind of had quite a few back and forth messages, and she sounded great, had the right skills, seemed to have the right personality. But when she actually came to our house, she actually barely engaged with Alex, and he would speak and I don't know, she would sort of brush him off. And then when my daughter come out to say hello, I could just, the way she actually engaged with the kids wasn't what I expected. Whereas on paper, she sounded great. And to speak to her, she sounded great. But I think actually seeing how they connect and how they speak to your kid, I think our best therapy assistant actually came out with some activities, and it was like a drawing activity that she came so she could get to meet him, and it was a bit of like an icebreaker. And I think it's really important, you know, from Alex's end, he connects with almost everybody. So he adored her and was asking when she was coming back, but I just got the feeling that she wasn't going to be the right fit. So yeah, I think where possible, make sure they meet your kids.
Absolutely. And trust your gut instinct as well. Like if you feel it's not going to be the right fit, 9 times out of 10, you're right. Okay, so I'm just going to move on now to how you guys actually use your therapy assistant, and more importantly, how you support your therapy assistant or support worker to actually support your child. Mel, I might go to you first on this. How do you guys support your therapy assistant to support your child, and how do you use them?
We give her major exposure to Arlo's therapies. So since we moved from Sydney, most of his therapy now, so physio, OT, speech, is done via telehealth. We've done physio intensives, many of them now via telehealth. So Ro and I are there doing the physical physio with a physio on screen, telling us what to do. So Maddie's come into this, and we've just booked her as much as we can with stretching our hours for every intensive. All of her shifts line up with Arlo's therapy appointments, so she's always there. We did an intensive almost straight off the bat with her, and that was like a throw into the deep end of, this is Arlo, this is how we do his physio. But it was great because she also saw what he was capable of. And we've met, a new physio in our local area who we see in the flesh, and this physio doesn't push him as much because she doesn't know Arlo like his old physio who does the intensive. And Maddie can be there saying, no, I know he can actually do more than this. So we just bring her to everything. Ro's going to Sydney on Monday to do some equipment trials with Prue, his OT in Sydney, and Maddie's coming along to help, with the wheelchair in and out of the car, to help Arlo do his tube feed lunch, but also just to be there and soak it in. And Maddie loves it because this is what she wants to do. Like, she wants to be an OT and potentially run her own clinic. So she's super keen. She'll stay beyond her shift if she's like really into watching, something. And again, she'll make suggestions and things because she knows Arlo pretty much as well as Ro and I do now. And, even things that we wouldn't notice, like she took off his AFO the other day and there was a little sore and she's like, it could be a pressure thing. Like, she just notices little things. But yeah, I guess how we use her is as much as we can. We have her 3 or 4 days a week. All of her shifts align with his appointments. She can do his appointments without us, which is amazing. Like, especially the ones that aren't as hands-on, like speech therapy and OT, we don't even have to do them. And, taking that away from what you have to do as a parent in one of our scenarios, it's huge. Like, you just get that break. And we can leave, or we feel comfortable leaving Arlo with her. We've bought a car seat for her car so she can go driving with Arlo. She picks him up from school now, and he just loves it. He so prefers seeing her pop out of the car than me or Ro. And like you were saying, she can go into school and make Arlo look cool rather than one of us sort of hovering around. So yeah, we use her in every which way, and she's very keen and always enthusiastic about that, which is great.
Yeah. And I do remember speaking to you earlier, and you sort of talked about that communication between the team, your A team. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so we've got our A team. So our physio, OT, speech, dietitian, all of Arlo's aides and his school teacher, we've got them all in like an email chain. And every bit of correspondence, Maddie is in that as well. They all know Maddie. She is across all the information we are with regard to all of his medical stuff, all of his therapy stuff. She's across everything. And another note I thought of earlier, when you're wanting to get funding for support hours into your NDIS plan for your kids, something that's come up a lot with the podcast I'm doing is ask your therapist to write about your need for support hours in the plan. They don't have to do that, but they can. And if your OT is recommending 15 hours of support for your child, as is your speechy, as is your physio, if they all write that, it's super strong and it will help you get those support needs as support hours, as we'll do in your carer statement, to indicate and be really gruesome in that, sort of say, this is what will happen if we don't have the support, give the horrible outcome, which sucks that we have to do. But yeah, do that carer statement and get every single one of your therapists to outline clearly the need for support hours, and then hopefully you will get that funding in your kids' plan.
Oh, that's a great tip.
I was just going to pop in there and say about the carer statement as well from your perspective, but yeah, getting it included from all your therapists has worked well for us. I was also going to say, like, I wouldn't particularly be asking for therapy assistant funding, because this is me personally, because I wouldn't want them to be like, oh, well, okay, we'll fund you this many hours at that reduced rate of the therapy assistant versus what we get for a therapist. So I think, it's about like getting the plan, getting the funding, and then for us to be creative about how we make it go further, which can be like obviously having your therapist, but then supporting that with your support people, be it therapy assistants or whatever, to be able to provide more at that reduced rate. But I wouldn't be flagging it too much, because I would be afraid of getting my funding cut, because they'd go, oh, well, we'll just fund you this many hours for a therapy assistant. And the therapist, I would be like, no. So I would just keep that to myself and plan. And then I've got more funds to work out what to do with. So that's all.
And I think you might have just answered one of the questions that's actually come up in the chat, like what are the fees for assistants? Do you know what they are specifically, Jen?
Do you know what? I don't actually know what they are specifically, because we're I suppose with plan management, but with the self-management, we just pay, you know what I mean? Like we determine a rate that we think is acceptable. So I don't actually know. I would have to look it up to be able to tell you what it is. Melanie, can you tell us?
Again, so HireUp has a set rate. I know with other platforms you have to, like the support worker sets their rate, and that can be different. HireUp has a set rate. I think it's about $55, $56 an hour. That goes.
I think Amanda's just written in NDIS rates are $86 an hour.
Okay, yeah, so HireUp's less than that. I think it goes up on a Saturday and Sunday, but it's across the board, so you don't have to sort of figure out a price with the support worker, which takes a bit of the awkwardness out of it.
Yeah.
I think that might have been, was that the rate for a therapy assistant as such? Yeah. I think the rate for a support worker is less than that, might be around the 50 something. And I think the other one around the skill development is maybe around the 60 mark, but I would need to look it up properly.
Yeah, and we can get that information out when we do our resource after this. But I'm just going to bring us back on track a little bit. We were just talking about, how do you use your therapy assistant, and importantly, how do you support your therapy assistant to support your child? So I'm just going to go to you now, Stacey, if you've got some examples of how it works for your family.
Firstly, can I just ask Mel, does Maddie want to change of scenery? We'd welcome her to the Sunshine State. She sounds amazing.
I know, right? We just need to figure out how to clone her. She does have a younger sister, so you could work on her.
Okay.
She's like dream kid. It's amazing.
Sounds phenomenal. So we've used therapy assistants in a few different settings since Alex was in preschool. So we did have a therapy assistant that helped Alex with some of those kind of school readiness goals in the year before school. And that was at home, but it was also at preschool as well. So we spoke to the preschool about some of the things that we're working on, and I guess negotiated hours that the therapy assistant could come in. And I guess it was about helping to do that in the natural environment and to practice some of those skills in a preschool setting. But also it was about role modeling some of those strategies to the preschool, so they could help with that school preparation as well. We also used a therapy assistant a lot when it came to school. So Alex, as part of his disability, didn't actually meet the criteria to get individual funding, which was actually a blessing, because it meant, we were fortunate that we had a wonderful school and they got creative and they were open to trying different things. So we were really fortunate and were able to work with them to see what that would look like. So we used a therapy assistant in the transition days. So she went along with Alex to those 3 transition days before school started. She wasn't attached to Alex for the sessions because we did want the teachers and the other kids to get to know him. But it was really helpful because she could observe how he acted in that type of school environment, which is quite different to preschool, and was able to start building a relationship with the teachers. This was really helpful when we then went on to pitch having the therapy assistant come along during school time in that first year. I will also add to that, we were really careful about choosing our therapy assistant. Like, we wanted somebody that just had that type of personality, that they were going to be collaborative, but also understand their role in the context of a classroom, so that they would form that positive relationship with the teacher, and make them more open to having someone coming into the classroom. So that was really important when we were picking who our therapy assistant would be in that setting. Once Alex was at school, our therapy assistant acted as that conduit between the therapist and the school. So she was really experienced working as a therapy assistant. And while she didn't replace the therapist, she was able to actually model some of the strategies in the classroom, and to be able to provide some coaching to the teacher and teacher's aid, plus also brainstorm. So in that first term, I would say the first term, he was, it's such a big transition for kids starting school, and there were definitely things happening that he didn't happen before and we weren't expecting. So having that person being able to come along and model some of those strategies and help set up some visual schedules and opportunities for him to have breaks, they were able to model that to the teacher in that natural class environment. But they also then were able to meet with other teachers, so the librarian, the sports teacher, and just those other people that he had exposure to throughout the day. So we did that for most of term one. Our therapy assistant actually went along to the school about, I think, maybe 4 to 6 hours a week, and we were really strategic about picking the right times. Another way we used our therapy assistant at school was to, we had the most incredible year 6 buddy. She was divine, and actually the whole year 6 was amazing. We were at a really small school, and the entire year 6 took Alex under his wing. When they actually graduated, they had a class party, and it was just Alex and the year 6 kids, and there was a pizza party. I bought pizzas, and they went into the hall and took a photo, and they wrote like a big card just saying how much they loved, just having him at the school and what they'd been able to learn. But we really, I guess we took on board that we had an amazing buddy who was keen to do that little bit extra. So we worked with our therapist, our teacher, his classroom teacher, and his buddy, and some of the other year 6 kids, to talk about some games that they could play at lunchtime to help facilitate that social inclusion. And the therapy assistant came along a few times just to model some different strategies and some different things that, I guess, making the support invisible, but different ways that they could bring other kids into the play and how they could get Alex involved, with the idea that they would fade back, which they did. She also came, we were really lucky again with our school, but they allowed his buddy to go into the class once or twice a week during the morning block, just for 30, 45 minutes when they had literacy activities. And in those times, kids are roaming around, and we thought this is a really great opportunity to just have some support, because he needed a bit of assistance with being able to focus on the task. So the therapy assistant came in and coached his buddy on how she could be that support person during that time. Again, it was a really fun way to do it. It wasn't having a teacher's aide in the classroom. The buddy I think kids are just really great at supporting other kids. I think even some of the ideas that she brought to it were amazing, and we were able to learn a lot through that. And then she also, at the end of the year, told us that one of her highlights of year 6 was being able to support Alex in the class. So it was a great leadership opportunity for her as well. I'm just thinking as well, another setting that we use a therapy assistant is at home. So what we do is, I've got 2 other kids, so my kids are quite close in age, so they're 8, 9, and 10. So we are always out and about at playgrounds and parks and stuff like that. So at this point, it hasn't been how I've used a therapy assistant to kind of get out and about, but we have kind of thought about what are some of the things that we don't like to do as much, or the things that Alex doesn't like to do with us. And the things that he does not like to do is to sit down with me and do handwriting, literacy, language, and all of those activities which you know, can be really fun, and you can do them in much more fun ways than sitting down at a table. But we have found a therapy assistant that's actually helped with that. So we had the most amazing speech pathology student. We actually found her on HireUp, and she was studying her master's, and she came along to our house a few afternoons a week. Our therapist wrote the program, so she kind of writes some of the goals that we're working on and shared a few strategies on how to work on it. But the therapy assistant was also able to bring her own ideas through, you know, what she was learning. But I guess what made the biggest difference was that she actually just brought fun. So I feel that, you know, I'm not always the most fun mum. And to be honest, at the end of the day, I don't have the energy to run around on the trampoline, bouncing around. And yeah, I'm not as fun with how I approach our therapy goals. So she was great. She would have these post-it notes on the trampoline where they would be jumping on phonic sounds, and they'd be practicing, you know, handwriting out in the backyard with chalk. So that, I think, was, yeah, he loved it. And it was just a really good use of time that helped us, but it also allowed me to then spend some other time with my kids doing homework and prepping dinner and kind of all those things that happen in the afternoon. She was also supported. I will also mention, like Mel, we've moved interstate and we continued to use our therapists. We had our A team in Sydney who were phenomenal, and we wanted to keep using them. Have not been able to find services here in Queensland. So a lot of what we do is via Zoom coaching. So we either, when it was in person, we would record lots of videos in the session if they couldn't come along, and we would share those. We uploaded it all onto a Google Drive, but now it's just all done by Zoom coaching. So they will come along to some Zoom sessions. We might record sessions. You know, we print resources and things, and that works really well. It also means that we can record it as well, so we can all refer back to it later and share it with other people.
Thanks, Stacey. And that it is true that many hands make light work. So, you know, if you can get them doing something which frees up a little bit of time for yourself to get on top of things, that's great. And so, Jen, how exactly do you use your therapy assistant or support worker? And you did mention using a personal trainer, which I'm quite interested to hear how that works.
Yeah, look, I love that one because it means it's just so typical, you know what I mean, to the ordinary life, you know. Like, I like the fact that Henry looks up to his dad, and his dad has a personal trainer, and Henry has the same personal trainer. So he's like, oh, I've got this, like I do personal training, like my dad does personal training, and mum's now doing personal training. So we all do personal training.
Muscles, Jen.
Oh no. So we're all doing personal training. So we found our personal trainer through you know, someone who was already coming to the home and providing a service to the family, and then just expanding on that and saying, hey, would you be interested? He ran his own business, and, you know, through COVID, obviously it was really tricky, and it kind of just morphed. And I was like, well, if you're interested, there's some stuff we could do, you know, with Henry, and you could help build his skills around, you know, and it depends what your goals are at the time, like whatever the goals are and the things that you're working on, whether it be like we're learning how to ride the trike, so he could support Henry with that. We're also working on, you know, going up and down stairs, so he could support Henry with that. So there was a lot of stuff, and coming to the home was good too, because then you can use your own environment to kind of do stuff. The other thing that we did is we grabbed you're talking about people who have like a good connection with your child that you kind of find in your community, and you know what they're like, you know they're great with your child, and you know your child has a connection with them. We had a part-time SLSO at the school, and hey Connie, we had a personal so we've got this SLSO at the school, and she would then come once a week. This was last year. So she would come once a week and help with some of our goals around learning. And we do have goals around learning in our NDIS plan, so we can do that. I know a lot of people kind of talk about all the crossover between school, but we've got it covered, so it's all good. And that worked really well. So we kind of found her like that. One of the other things that we've done, and I was just thinking on from what Melanie was saying about how her team kind of communicate. So we've been using the Same View application where you can like post videos and you can post goals, and so under the goals you can post videos. So I would say, for example, if it was a therapy session that our therapy assistant couldn't come to because maybe it was out of their hours or whatever, so we would do we would video it and then we would upload it, and we'd also talk about maybe some examples that the therapist gave us about how we could work towards goals, like some particular activity. So we could upload that, and then our people could then see that and follow that. So we kind of used that as a good way to kind of communicate. And then, you know, as people come on board, so with our preschool, for example, they can then log into that too, and then they can see examples of videoing about how to do things. I found one thing also with our therapy assistants that works really well is letting them know the why. So kind of like educating them around the why things are important, because our therapy, our person was like, well, why are we working on pointer? Like, why? And so you could explain, oh, well, we're working on that because it's a, you know, it's a skill development and it means that they can then do this, 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 and this. And like giving her that information. And then once she understood that, then she kind of, I felt like she kind of grabbed hold of it more and then was thinking about things, you know, that she could do to kind of, you know, practice those skills. So that was really good. Other things that she does is like she takes Connor out and about. Connor has real trouble separating from me. So one of the things that we do is if she takes him to swimming or she takes him to the library, we're trying to help him to be happy in an environment with other people. And with preschool, we've really struggled. We've just started a new preschool, and we've found that if Monique takes Connor to preschool and does the little handover stuff, he seems to be happier to stay than if I take him and then he's super upset when he sees mum leave. So we've kind of incorporated that. And that was also feedback from other people in our team who've said, hey, have you thought about maybe, you know, Monique could do that, and then that means that he's going to be less. And it's like, oh, okay, it's good to get, this is why it's good to have open communication with your team and to be throwing ideas and not just in their space, like, you know, talking about speech stuff with your OT or physio stuff, you know, with your psychologist. Like, you know, you can get different ideas from different people as well. One thing that we do with Monique that I find really good, and we talk about accessing. So she obviously, it's been really great. Well, you know, the one positive about COVID, I suppose, has been taking things online and them being able to be involved, like Melanie was saying, in the sessions and see those sessions. So we've done a lot of that, but we've also looked at what parent training we've done. And so we try to incorporate, if there's parent training, and I kind of go, well, you know, parent training's carer training. And if there's free things, like we go to Next Sense, for example. Connor's deaf, so we do therapy through Next Sense, and they, for families of who you know use their service, they have an evening once a week, once a fortnight. I think it's moved to once a fortnight session, free session, where parents can come and learn signing, which is awesome. So I contacted them and said, hey, look, I'm all in for it. Can I also sign up our support worker? And they were like, yeah, great. And so now she logs in and she does those sessions, and she's learning the signs. And then when she's taking him out to the community, she's helping facilitate connections and introductions and using sign and helping him if he's getting frustrated because he can't communicate. So all sorts of different ways. But I think parent training is a goodie to be able to give the support people that knowledge and upskilling them, which is great. And I think they really appreciate it. Like if they've got the best intentions and they're in for the kind of long term, I think they really appreciate being given those opportunities, and they feel kind of more connected, I think, with the family too.
Oh, thanks, Jen, for sharing all of that. We have actually got quite a few questions, and a lot of them tend to relate to, I guess, the nitty-gritty around the funding and being self-managing and about insurances. So we will collate all those questions and endeavour to answer them in the resource, but we might have time for just one or two. So I do have one that's come through the Q&A box, and it just says, can you please help us understand how to get our physio, OTs, etc. on board with using a support worker as a therapy assistant? Is it enough for them to come along to therapy appointments and learn from the OT, or does there need to be some sort of formal agreement signed?
All right, so that's kind of where we talked. Do you think that kind of touches into where we talked earlier about whether you're kind of going with that traditional, and again, it depends on how it's managed, self-managed, do whatever, like you've got more flexibility and freedom. If it's plan managed, then you're sort of thinking about, is it the therapy assistant where they're meant to work under a therapist and the therapist's insurance? Because that's something different to this other line item, because that's in capacity building funding, so your therapy bucket of funding. But then there's also this other line item in capacity building that means you don't have to have the therapy assistant technically as such. You can use that individual skill development line item. So I think you don't need to get too caught up on, are they working under a therapist? Because gosh, you know, if they're not working under a therapist and the therapist's insurance, then we're stuffed. We can't do it, because you do have this other line item, and it's individual skill development. It's 15-037-0117-1-3. If you want to
pop that in the resource.
We'll pop it in the resource. But it kind of opens it up, because I know when that change happened, you know, way back a few years ago, when that change happened and they were saying, oh, now therapy assistants have to be working under a therapist, blah, 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 and people were like, oh no, how are we gonna do it now? But I think this other line item is the key. If you need to, if you self-manage, you're all good. But if you need to quote a line item, then you don't necessarily have to be quoting the therapy assistant. You can be quoting this other one. And for all intents and purposes, the way that we're operating, they are a therapy assistant. But technically, under the rules, you know, then you're looking at the other one. I know it's confusing, but I hope it makes a little bit of sense.
And I think what we'll do is, when we do the resource, we'll put in those different scenarios, whether you are self-managed, plan managed, or agency managed, and then just give you those examples that we're talking about, because everybody's obviously situation is very unique. And some people have, like Jen, some portions will be self-managed, some will be plan managed, and there can be a lot of confusion. So we definitely will clarify that. Mel, were you going to add something then? I felt like you were going to say something about that agreement.
Yes. Yeah, look, self-managed here, so fully flexible. From my experience, all of our therapists have loved us bringing a support worker along. It's always useful having another set of hands to be the entertainment or whatever. So we've had no formal arrangements, but everyone has just embraced us bringing a support worker along. There's been no problem.
I think if everyone's working on the same page and everyone wants to see the best for our kids and they want to see our kids thriving and achieving their goals, if a therapist was a bit antsy about why you were bringing someone else in, it would be red flags for me. Yeah. There
are some fabulous questions, and I wish we had so much longer to sit here and go through them. But yes, like I said to everyone, we will collate them, and when we do this resource, we'll make sure we get to those questions, because there's some really, really good ones, even coming through on Facebook and through the question and answer box. So I think we're going to have to wrap it up, but I just want to say a huge thank you to Mel, Stacey and Jen for joining this panel today. It's been really insightful. And I just wanted to share with everyone else that we have some really exciting workshops and webinars coming up along with some exciting projects that we're working on. We will have another panel event later this term on disability representation in the media, and that panel will include people with disability and will actually explore the concept of disability in the media in a family-friendly session. So more information will be released on that shortly. Please connect with us. We were Reframing Disability. We are now Kindred. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram under the handle @KindredForFamilies. If you're not into the social media thing, that's fine. Please head over to our website, which is kindred.org.au, and sign up to our newsletter. You'll get inspiring stories, details of upcoming events, helpful resources, and other opportunities to be part of our community. So thank you, everybody, and we hope you have a fabulous weekend.
Thanks, Bree.
Thank you.
Bye.
I want to super quickly add, if you have a question that you didn't get to ask, add it onto the feedback form that I just shared and will be emailed to you so we can include it in the resources. I was quickly trying to type it, but I couldn't get it out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Bye, Jen.
Bye, ladies.